and welcome to Most Recent Save, the podcast where we talk to influential voices in games and pop culture about the pivotal moments, challenges, and triumphs that shape their lives and careers. It is a journey through the pathways of life where the focus is not just on the destination, but the stories that shape the journey in between the save points. I am your host, Dr. Rachel Cowart. Today, we are joined by Coty Craven. Coty is an accessibility and inclusion expert and advocate who has been working in the games industry since 2013. He created and led award-winning games media outlet Can I Play That? To help advance accessibility and awareness in the games industry, and he recently launched the Game Content Triggers database. Despite all those amazing accolades, and perhaps the most important thing to know about him is that he's a dog person. He's a writer and lives in Michigan and has an intense hatred of winter, which means we are truly kindred spirits. Welcome, Coty.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited to share the microphones with a fellow person in the North who doesn't like the cold. So this show is all about the journey, where you are today in the games industry, which seems to be the busiest person in the business, from what I can tell from all of these entrepreneurial adventures that you have embarked on and been successful with. But I want to start from the very beginning.
I grew up in Metro Detroit in Michigan. We were a pretty boring blue collar family. My dad did GM work for
Oh,
decades. My mom had a daycare, and I had a brother. And the video games were for him, but you can't keep me away from the console. We got our first console was the original Nintendo, the NES. And every Saturday we used to rent. There was this awful little like hole in the wall video store where, when you could still go and rent things and hold them in your hand, and you could go rent the game cartridges, like the gold Zelda thing. And so we used to go and rent a video game every Saturday. And I remember we played Duck Hunt was my favorite. Like that was my I love video games game, because like the fact that you could take that stupid little gun and shoot it at the TV and have something happen, that was magic. In my 6-year-old mind, that was magic. And so yeah, we played Double Dragon and Spy versus Spy and stuff like that. And I was kind of hooked. Like it was a really nice outlet.
our stories are similar. I have a brother. The
Yeah.
games were for him.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but I also played a lot of Spy v Spy and Double Dragon.
Yeah.
What can
They're
take
great
ah,
games.
Spy v Spy, I think, is how the rivalry in my childhood really intensified, because I never won. I never won at that game. It's so frustrating. So NES, did your parents buy it for you or for the
Yes.
family? Okay. So
Yes.
they were open to games and gaming. Did they play with you?
Not ever.
Not
No.
ever.
No,
Okay.
they made sure that we were kept in all of the current consoles. So we had,
Okay.
NES, Super Nintendo, Dreamcast, Sega, all of it.
Oh wow. You were
Yeah, it was
the good house in the neighborhood that had a
right.
Dreamcast.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a
The
unicorn.
Dreamcast was fun. And then my mom got rid of it. Like I wasn't done playing with it, but my brother was. So she got
Okay.
rid of it. I was like, but what about me and my
Yeah.
needs?
I like it too.
Right. Yeah.
So
So, but that's
interesting.
okay. I turned to computer games. And
There you go.
my favorite game of the 90s, Encarta. I
Classic.
consider that a game because you can go be your best nerd self and learn everything in Encarta. It was great.
The days of the early computers are all coming back to me. Coming
Yeah.
back to me. So, when you were younger, games were something you played with in your house. Were your friends also? Were you playing games with your friends? Was that part of your social kind of network at the time, or?
Um, I didn't really, I was kind of a weird kid, so I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So games were my friends, essentially. Like that's how I spent my time, because I didn't really have a whole lot of friends that were coming over, and my brother had friends and they played video games. But yeah, for me, they were like my connection to the world outside of school. I remember the first Zelda was amazing. And I don't know if it was like the gold, like it felt special, the gold cartridge. And it was just this special thing. And you got to go in and be a hero. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Zelda was it until like the tycoon games came along, like Roller Coaster Tycoon, Zoo Tycoon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, so many hours in
yeah.
the Tycoon games. Do, do they still make those games? Because there was a time, there
Mhm.
was a lot of them.
Yeah. And they're all great.
They
I'm bad.
are.
Like I made roller coasters that would kill people, but
It
I had fun doing
We
it.
had a great time. Yeah, and it was also this was the era. So this was maybe was like late 90s,
Yeah,
early 2000s, because there was also a Sim
yeah.
City, Sim
The Sims
Tower.
game. You remember Sim Ant?
I
Sim Ant
do.
was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it. Sim Ant and Sim Farm were mm, peak
Yeah.
gaming in the 80s. Yeah,
Yeah, it's all downhill from here because
it was. Yeah.
those were
We
the
never we never met that ever
no,
again.
absolutely not. When you were younger then, were games on the radar as a career possibility or was it really just not even? No.
No.
What were you
No,
thinking
I,
you'd be when you grew up?
I went through a lot of phases. Obviously dinosaurs. I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was
Oh,
in fourth
yeah.
grade, like everyone does.
Yes.
And that passed. Jurassic Park cured me of that. I don't want to die by dinosaurs. I just wanted to
No.
find them. Um, and I wanted to be a barber for a while. And then I wanted to work with horses, which is what I ended up
Okay.
doing until my body was like, nope, we're done doing this. We are too creaky and old to continue the manual labor.
But your degrees
Mhm.
and at university were not related to tending to horses.
Not at all.
Okay.
No,
I was like, wait, we've skipped something, Cody. I'm trying to scroll through my notes. I'm like, you did not study like veterinary
no,
studies. No,
no.
okay.
My degrees are all of the things that I could do without having to take math classes. I started with sociology because I wanted to, at the time, I wanted to go into psychology and be like a social worker. And then I
Hmm.
saw that you have to take statistics and be good at it,
Hmm.
which is, I've never met a math class that I passed. It's never going to happen. Like it is not in the cards for me. So I'm like, okay, well, sociology can be the next best thing. Nobody told me that you can't really do anything with a sociology bachelor's degree.
It's true. You can
Like
really.
it's about as useful as a creative writing degree. So I went on into the master's program for English and creative writing solely because I didn't want to pay my student loans back yet. I could not afford
Okay.
to.
Delay tactic.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then after that, I got an MFA in creative writing, partially because I still didn't want to pay my student loans back, but because they rudely introduced that program when I was like 3 months away from finishing my master's degree. So
So you had to do
yeah,
it
I
that
had
point.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was forced on me. Yeah.
But you enjoyed learning about creative writing and the
Yeah.
practice of that, even though at that point you still were not intending on that being your career, or
I kind of had these unrealistic aspirations that I was going to write a book and that was going to be the career. I didn't know that like you have to work yourself to death to make a living as a writer and just no. I didn't like
yeah.
I wrote a book and I ended up self-publishing it because it was a really personal story and I just wanted to be done with it. Yeah, writing has kind of always been the hobby that I
Mhm.
wished I could monetize and make a living out of, but now that I've found a career doing not writing things, I'm able to enjoy it again as a hobby,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
nice.
That is nice.
So
So you go for a bachelor's, that's 4 years. A master's is 2 years. Another
yeah.
qualification is how many more years? One or two more?
So I got all of them done in a span of 6 years.
6 years.
They all took 2 years. I didn't start college and finish it until I was in my 30s.
Oh, we have skipped forward, Cody.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to backtrack a little bit. Okay. So
Okay.
what happened between high school and college in your 30s?
I tried traditional college and it was not accessible to me. I've had rheumatoid arthritis since I was 4 and I couldn't sit there in a lecture hall all day. Like it hurt too much. And there at the time, I graduated in 2000, there wasn't a legitimate online alternative. Like you had University of Phoenix, which at the time was kind of a joke,
Hmm.
and all of those scam schools that everyone is
Hmm.
now being repaid for. But there wasn't really anything that was accessible to me as somebody that had to sit there and deal with chronic pain. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I just don't go to college. And I intended to just, follow my family and do blue collar work
Hmm.
until I couldn't anymore.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell me where horses come in, because I am a lover of all
Yeah.
animals, and I feel like
Okay.
there's a horse story now in between.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got a horse. Growing up, my neighbor had horses and I was obsessed. Like I would walk the half a mile down to the end of the road just to give him a carrot. And so we got to know the neighbor and she taught me how to ride. So when I don't even remember what age I was, I got this horse for $100. Worst horse ever. He was mean. He tripped over everything. He bit you. And he was kind of creepy to look at. He was just white and he had white face, pink nose, pink, and he needed sunscreen slathered on him, which also made him bite you. But I don't know, something about having a mean horse. It was like, yes, this is my calling.
This is
I
the one for me.
right. Yeah, I worked at a few different barns. I started working at a barn when I was a teenager, just as like a
Okay.
stable hand, taking care of the horses. And then I worked my way on up to different farms, managing them and taking care of horses. And it was kind of great. Even I had to be outside all winter. And I don't know what happened between my 20s and now, where I'm just a baby and I cannot handle
Mm,
weather anymore. But I used to be like outside working in my shorts when it's 30 degrees out. Can't do it anymore, but
yeah. Something happens when we get
hmm
older. Maybe we're less tolerant to be uncomfortable is
Right.
my working theory.
Yeah.
So you were working at stables, you were taking care of horses, living your best life, and then you decided, actually now college is accessible to me and I want to go explore that.
I realized that in that kind of blue collar work, as a queer person, I was never really going to be accepted. All of the farm work happens in all of the towns where people like me are not necessarily wanted. So I moved to Chicago and started school. And then that's when games kind of happened accidentally. A friend was recovering. She had slipped and broken her leg somehow. She had like a compound fracture, so she was going to be in bed for a month or something. So my partner and I had gotten her an Xbox because she needed something to pass the time because you can't just lay there and read for 20 hours a day. She never touched it. Like she was just not interested in the least. But we were. And that was 2013, 2014. And we realized very quickly that games were not accessible to deaf and hard of hearing people. So that led to us doing accessibility reviews, which kind of turned into consulting, and then it turned into this whole thing. And it was like, oh, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Okay. So
It's a bit of a full circle, right? Because games
yeah,
were integral to your childhood.
exactly.
Was there a gap then in you
Big
playing?
one.
Big
Yeah.
one. Okay.
Yeah. I stopped playing games probably around the time Sims 2 came out. So there was a big gap because, they were more of an investment than I could make as an adult.
That makes sense.
That
Yes.
had to pay for everything myself now. So games were not not part of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. They're
But
not only expensive, they are time expensive to
mhm,
be able to play,
mhm,
especially games like The Sims. I lost
yeah,
so many hours
yeah.
in Sims.
Well, I mean, how else are you going to set your Sims on fire and drown them if you
You
don't take
know,
the time to experiment?
I need to know what it's like to barter with the Grim Reaper. I want to get abducted by the aliens. I mean, this all takes time. I got the mods for the aliens. I didn't have that kind of
Yeah,
time. Um, okay, so that's when Can I Play That came
yeah,
to life. Tell us about Can I Play That?
yeah. Can I Play That was a whirlwind. It was equally the best and worst thing I've ever done in my life. The best because it was incredible to see the work that we were doing. Like I had assembled this team of all disabled writers and content creators, and we made this little website that made a difference in the industry. Like I remember when Phil Spencer retweeted one of our reviews and just it broke the site. We had to upgrade the hosting because we had gone from like 50 visitors a week to, I think we hit 20,000 in one day, because there were people taking note of the work we were doing and seeing how valuable that was and how necessary it was. You don't have $60 to spend on a game, and then you're like, well, I can't play it because it's missing subtitles, or it doesn't have controller remapping, or menus are tiny. There's a million reasons why people can't play it, and there's still not really refund policies for accessibility issues, which is a shame. Xbox fixed that. Yeah, so we started doing accessibility reviews that were singularly focused. So I was doing deaf and hard of hearing reviews. Steve Saylor was doing work for blind and low vision reviews. Grant Stoner did mobility reviews. So we were trying to serve everyone that could need this information, and without it being all encompassing, because I don't know what it's like for a blind person to play a game. I'm not blind. I don't have that experience. So I don't want to speak on it outside of basic, like, these menus are really small. I struggle to see them. So, I think it's a pretty good chance that people that have low vision will also struggle to read them. It became this whole consulting thing, and we had some amazing contracts, and we got to do workshops and trainings with some of the biggest studios in the world. And it all happened just because we were in a bad mood accidentally, because Destiny had really bad subtitles.
That's amazing. And what a team.
Yeah.
Grant, Steve, wow, that's quite a team.
Yeah.
I think we take it a little bit for granted that today accessibility is at the heart of a lot of
Oh, yeah.
conversations. Not maybe as central as we would like it to be still, but definitely more. But 2013, 2014, like that was revolutionary. Nobody was
Yeah.
talking about it.
I always feel weird, like, bragging about it, but like, can I play that is kind of what made it mainstream. Like, you
Mm.
didn't ever see anything at IGN or Polygon reporting on accessibility before we were. And then, a lot of people saw the numbers that we were doing and the interaction that we were getting from not just disabled gamers, but from developers too. And they were like, oh, we need to do that too. That's where it's at, right? Like,
Yeah. You should
so
brag
yeah.
about that, Cody. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
It
Changing the
was
world.
really cool for a small team, and we were all just starting out in the industry, and we did it, and it
Yeah, you
was
did.
it was really awesome. And we've all gone on to much bigger careers now, and it's because of that work we did as angry gamers because we couldn't play the games.
Well, I find that a lot of times people will ask, and I'm sure you get this question too, like, how did you carve your niche in the industry? And a lot of it just happens with like our very specific lens and a very specific need that's not being filled.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's kind of every project that I've done. Like,
Mhm.
the content triggers database was an accident too. It's just
Please, that's where we're going next because that's how I found you. I would
yes.
love to hear. I've heard the origin story before, but it must be chronicled here on this podcast,
Yes.
obviously. So please.
So yeah, the origin story is kind of twofold. It's partially my therapist's fault. I will forever blame her for me doing this project. We were doing work, EMDR and virtual exposure therapy focused on fire. She asked me to try and avoid triggers that were focused on that topic, because she wanted to be present with me to be exposed to them so that we could work through it properly, and I wasn't, causing lasting harm to myself by fire everywhere. So I left therapy, like, and it was the same day that I had an appointment with her. I left my appointment, went back out to the living room, turned on the Xbox, booted up The Witcher 3, and the first quest that I got to was the one where Geralt has to go into the barn, get the horses out, get the guy out, and it wrecked me. Like, absolutely wrecked me. And I asked her, I was like, okay, I have played this game a million times. How have you broken my brain so that I cannot do this specific part anymore? So she explained to me, like, we're doing this deep work, your brain is basically more primed for being triggered by these things that you can normally not even think about, which is why I asked you to avoid it. And I didn't. And
Didn't
it wasn't
know how.
intentional. I didn't
Yeah.
know. So in doing that and in talking about it, because I saw what an impact it had on me that it hadn't even had previously, even though this issue had been there for years, I realized like there isn't any way for anybody that's dealing with anything like this to know what they're getting into. I just opened Persona 3 the other day for the first time. The first scene in it is this high school girl holding a gun to her head, willing herself to kill herself. Like, what if I didn't have the support system that I had and I was struggling with depression and having suicidal ideation, and that was the first thing that I saw in a game. And there isn't anywhere to that tells you what you're going to face, like without spoiling the story or anything, but people need to know this stuff, because it can do real damage. So that's half of the origin story. The other half is my partner's mother. She came to visit in May of last year and decided that she wanted to play video games when she was 96 years old. And so we started with Zelda. It was great. We started with Breath of the Wild. Wonderful time. She just wanted to cook all the things all the time. That was fine. And then she wanted to play Red Dead Redemption 2. So she was a 96-year-old Black woman who was from the South. She was born in Louisiana, moved up to Missouri, lived through Jim Crow, all of that. How do I introduce her to a game that has the clan in it? So I talked with my partner and I was like, well, I don't want to tell her she can't play it, but like I don't want to ruin her, she probably really doesn't need to see the clan. She's seen them plenty in real life. So we ended up just like warning her, like, you're going to run into this in these specific areas. So when you're playing, if you want to skip them, let me know and I will guide you away from them. She didn't want to skip it. She wanted vengeance to set them on fire, which I thought was great. And so yeah, she did that, and then she kept reloading the save to try it different ways. Like, oh well, I'm glad that you're enjoying this, trying all the ways that we can kill the fake clan. Great. But so yeah, that's how the database came about, because there is not really a way for people that are playing games to know what they're facing in games. So my focus has been very mental health heavy.
I think it's really important. And that example was a great example of a lot of times in the discussions of content warnings, people will say it's a spoiler, but
Right,
it's not about it being a
right.
spoiler.
Yeah.
It's about knowing what you're going to encounter and then choosing to encounter it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to be able to consent to what you're exposing yourself to. Like, and there's a difference between like horror games scare me, so I avoid them. But say I was to play Dead Space before it had the content warnings and the skippable stuff. Like it wouldn't harm me in any way. Like it would not make me need extra therapy sessions in the same way that this Witcher quest did,
Mhm.
because I have not experienced traumatic events similar to that of Dead Space, thank God, because that would be a lot of therapy. But it's not spoiling the content. It's just, hey, this is a thing, beware.
Absolutely.
Make your own decision. Do you want to play it? Do you want to skip it?
Mhm.
Or do you want to not play it right now? When you're in a better headspace, come back to it, great. But just, so you can be aware of what's in the game so you're not hurting yourself.
Exactly. And how many games are in the database now? Because I know it's ever growing.
Yeah, we are up to about 150.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, we
exciting.
launched with 30. My focus for launch was to get the biggest and most played titles. So we launched with games like The Witcher and Cyberpunk and a few others that had just come out, the new Assassin's Creed game. So now we're kind of in a phase of, okay, if it's a game that add it. I have run through the collection of games that I can add by memory. So it's a multi-hour endeavor for me to get a new game on there now. But
Right.
we've grown a big enough team so that there's a lot of people that still have these games committed to memory so they can easily add them. Or at the very most, like boot it up for a refresher instead of playing through the whole 100 hours of a game and then adding it.
Is this a volunteer effort or is
Yes.
this? It is. Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
everyone listening, you need to go support these efforts. They have wonderful merch. I have some. I have a shirt that says "Can't be avoided," which I wear with
Yes.
pride because it's funny, because it's true. Because
Hmm.
you can't avoid me in a
Yes.
room. I know the one that says anxiety is very popular.
Yes, that one, I really like the one that says we cry so you don't have to, because it's very true. Like we're all sitting there in this Discord talking about these horrifying things that we're finding in the games.
The work you're doing is commendable, and I'm glad that there is a mental health support around you and your team,
Yeah,
because it isn't frivolous. I think a lot of people think like, oh, it's just a game, and the things you're experiencing, you can just walk away or whatever. But these experiences stick with you.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the point, right? Like the point of a good story, the same as a good book or movie, you remember it for decades. There are so many books that I've read that I still remember perfectly. But and games kind of hit different than books and movies, because like you're controlling these characters, you're causing these things to happen. I mean, that's kind of the hallmark of a good game. So,
It
you know,
is.
well done, mission
Yeah.
accomplished. Also, give us a little warning.
So now you are firmly seated in the gaming space.
Yeah.
What do you think is on the horizon next for you?
So I just today actually accepted a new job that I can't talk about
Exciting.
yet, but
Exciting. Is it in games?
it's game adjacent.
Okay, very cool.
So, but I'll still be able to do like consulting and stuff. So I'll still be
Mhm.
doing the accessibility, excuse me, and mental health stuff that I've been doing. Future, I think, is I mean, for me, it's mental health accessibility, because that's kind of the last holdout for accessibility that people still aren't really talking about. And I know there's a handful of accessibility advocates that are like, well, it's not the same. It's not really accessibility. Yes, it is. I was not okay after that Witcher scene. Like I had to go lay on the couch and cry. And if it can have that kind of disabling impact on you, it is absolutely accessibility. So that's kind of my focus now, is trying to use the weird reputation that I've built in this industry for doing accessibility work to be like, hey, look, this is the thing that we're missing. If we want to make truly inclusive games, this is what we need to focus on also, because we're really failing. We should be able to turn to games for fun without having to worry about, okay, well, I'm gonna have to cry for an hour and a half after I play this game because it's gonna surprise me in a way I wasn't expecting.
Given this very nonlinear path that is taking you to where you are, is there something maybe unexpected in your life and experience, or maybe your studies in college that have suited you well down this path that maybe you wouldn't have expected would have served you so well in games?
Yeah, kind of a weird one and not really the most pleasant thing, but we had to learn how to cope with rejection when we were doing queries and stuff in my MFA program. That taught me a lot about dealing with all of the hate that you get from existing in game spaces, which it's kind of a weird thing to talk about, but like if you're going to work in this space, unless you're going to be a hermit, you need to have that thick skin, because the death threats are going to find you eventually. Like they will come for you, and you know, you need to be able to not cope with it, but like, idiot, you know, and not let it get to you in a way that it makes you hate the work you do. There's always going to be that subset of people that are just miserable people that want to make everyone else miserable too. And like I still think about, there was this back in 2020 when Assassin's Creed Valhalla came out. I commented publicly on Twitter about their description of this, one of the people that hunt you. I don't remember what they're called. But she was a burn victim, and it was like this horrible trope for people that have burns. Like she was ashamed of her face and she thought she was hideous. And so I called Ubisoft on it. I was like, hey, this is not okay. And then the horrible people in games caught wind of it. And there was like a week-long assault of online people that were sending me threats. And there's this one guy, if I ever see you on the street, it's over for you. And I still wonder sometimes, is he still looking for me in Chicago? You know, is he still mad about me having an opinion about his game, which was changed after I called them on it. So, you know, I clearly ruined the game for millions of people because I had a thought, and Ubisoft listened to me. But yeah, is he still out there mad? Did I ruin his life? he never saw me out on the streets like he said he was gonna. So I don't know. The
That's
flip side of that is when you do exist publicly, you meet wonderful other people who have also developed those skills and you support each other and kind of drown out the awfulness. So it's nice.
that is so true. There's no better people than I have met than
Yeah,
in games, like no
yeah,
question. Yeah.
absolutely.
So, Cody, if we are lucky enough to have this interview again 10 years from now, what would you hope that we would be saying about your most recent save?
Um, it's been my goal for a long time since I started doing accessibility work. I would like to be obsolete. I don't want the industry to need people like me anymore. Because like we've achieved peak accessibility, including mental health accessibility. We have all of these people that are dedicated to working on it. We don't need accessibility reviews because yeah, you can play the game because the settings are going to be there. The inclusive design processes are going to be so embedded in game design that it's not even a question. So yeah, I would hope that we are talking about what a useless person I have become in the games industry. That's
No. I love that answer and also hate it. So, well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey with us today.
yeah, thank you for having me.
This podcast was produced by Zeitgeist, a multimedia content production studio that focuses on the intersection of games, science, and pop culture, created by Rachel Cowart. And if you would like more Zeitgeist content, you can find me on YouTube at Zeitgeist, Psychgeist. And I also have a mostly monthly newsletter on Substack where you can find if you search for the same name. Until next time, be excellent to each other and always cite your sources.